But you're also seeing assets like Bitcoin. Bitcoin has become the modern day gold. People all over the world are pouring into it. Companies from Fortune 500s to a company like ours, to sovereign wealth funds, to the richest families on earth are all hoarding Bitcoin.
That was Eric Trump discussing the benefits of Bitcoin. But the real question is this Bitcoin cycle over or is it about to end? Well, Colin Talks Crypto has a new thesis talking about M2 money supply, and we just hit a brand new all-time high today. And in this chart right here, you can see we hit a new all-time high with the M2 money supply. Now, M2 money supply just measures cash and cash equivalents. It's the measure of the money supply that includes cash, checking deposits, and easily convertible near money assets. And people like to use the M2 money supply because it tends to correlate very well with Bitcoin if you offset it by 80 days. It takes 80 days for that money to hit the market and then trickle into the different assets, whether it's gold, Bitcoin, or the stock market. But Colin Talks Crypto has a dire warning. Bitcoin is no longer following this M2 money supply. You can see it right here. The correlation now looks to be broken. Now the question is, what does this M2 money supply mean about Bitcoin's cycle top? Can we use this to predict when Bitcoin is gonna near its top? Well, he breaks that down in a previous post here. This new all-time high, but global M2 doesn't change the fact Bitcoin still isn't tracking M2. And here's his post yesterday. Global M2 is not currently correlated. Could it resume? Sure, maybe it will, maybe it won't. There's no guarantee. But here's the very important factor. We do know that Bitcoin, when it neared all three past cycle tops, Bitcoin broke correlation with global M2. So what we're potentially seeing here is this broken correlation is the signal that Bitcoin is nearing its cycle end. Now, to back this up, Colin does think that we could be closing in on a potential cycle top about 3 months or so from now. That also fits in with my prediction. I think Bitcoin's top will maybe actually hit Q1 2026. If you fast forward 3 months from now, it's going to be really close to that range. Now, he references this YouTube video where he covers this expected scenario. I want to show you a screenshot. This is him showing the 2021 cycle top, and you can see Bitcoin is this orange line right here, while this yellow line is the M2, again, offset by about 80 days. Bitcoin broke down as the M2 continued to hit a new all-time high, and if you focus in on this area right here, unfortunately, it looks a little bit like what's happening today. Now, Colin has a theory on why this is happening, and I looked at the data, and I tend to agree. I believe global M2 decouples from Bitcoin at the end of each bull run because the liquidity is now flowing into altcoins instead of Bitcoin. It's the same reason that Altseason is at the end of a crypto cycle. Liquidity flows from alpha, aka Bitcoin, down to the beta risk assets, aka altcoins. So when global M2 is going up and that money's not going into Bitcoin, well, folks, it's going somewhere. Liquidity is not just disappearing. So this would mean that the decoupling of M2 and Bitcoin actually proves we're in the late stage of the crypto cycle as that money is flown into alts instead of Bitcoin. Now, like I said, I wanted to determine this myself, so let's just look at some of the major altcoins price compared to Bitcoin. All right, well, we can't talk about Altseason and Bitcoin without talking about ETH. So this is ETH BTC. This is Ethereum priced in Bitcoin, looking at weekly candles, and you can see liquidity has been flowing back into Bitcoin for about the past 3 or 4 months here. It's 126 days, so 4 months, a little bit of change. ETH has gained 100% against BTC. And so this is very similar to what we saw at the end of the 2017 cycle. You know, ETH found a bottom against Bitcoin, hit the bottom at the same exact range, and then Altseason started, and you can see it really kicked off right here around March, April 2021. Now, you could also see the same thing with Doge. Doge just bled and bled and bled, and then it found a very strong bottom and started to pump, and it started to pump hard. Looks like we might be seeing some of this liquidity flow from Bitcoin into Doge, and it also looks like we're seeing some of this liquidity flow from Bitcoin into BNB. BNB is up almost 50% over the past 70 days. And we're seeing that liquidity flow from Tron into Bitcoin. And you can even look at Cardano. Cardano had a nice little run here last year, cooled off, created a higher low, and now it looks like some of the funds are flowing from Bitcoin to ADA. And don't take my word for it that Altseason is starting to heat up. You can look at coin market cap, and this is the altcoin season index. We are knocking on the door of Altseason. 75 confirmed Altseason. We're at 72. And these are coins that have outperformed Bitcoin. So 72 out of the top 100 coins have outperformed Bitcoin over the last 90 days. And so people need to be prepared that this could be, quote unquote, the worst bull run year ever for Bitcoin. The cycle top could be a lot nearer than a lot of people are guessing. And you can see here since, as of January 1st, year to date through September 15th, Bitcoin's only pumped 23%, which would put it in the very low range, and it would be by far the worst post-halving year. But this chart is not to be ignored, and you see it so high. I don't think all of that liquidity is going to flow into altcoins. I do think Bitcoin is going to put in another leg. I do think it's going to put in a new all-time high. You just got to be a little bit patient, but don't be surprised that this big parabolic blow off top doesn't happen like a lot of people are expecting. Why? Some of the money already flown into altcoins. So I'm DZ for Discover Crypto. I want to give a big shout out to Colin Talks Crypto for this detailed analysis. Folks, I'll see you and your Bitcoin or your altcoins. It's that season at the top.